somebody bring me back some money, please. I negotiate the best compensation package, which I think everyone should be interested in. So I first want to talk about our panels, and first I'd like to introduce Yolanda Owens. She's a director from Pearson, and also along with Pamela Sherman, she's a human resource program director for American Heart Association. And also, she was formerly the assistant human resource manager of recruiting for State Farm. So right now, we're gonna go ahead and get started. So, there's a lot of questions that come up. You know, when you start talking about negotiating your salary, and or you start thinking about when is the most appropriate time to talk about salary, which is for a lot of people uncomfortable. So I want to first start off by saying, you know, if I'm afraid that if I put my application, what my salary requirement is, I may not be considered for the job if my requirements are out of range. How do I determine what is appropriate indicator for the salary requirement on the application? So I'm going to first direct this question to Pam.
That is an interesting one because I hear from people a lot about, well, I don't want to put too much on the application because they might just ignore me because I'm out of their salary range. And I think the best advice, and Yolanda, chime in please, is to really be true to yourself, because if you end up taking a job that's paying a lot less than you need or than you anticipated, ultimately you are not going to feel rewarded and you're not going to want to stay in that job. So you want to be as honest as possible, but you do want to be realistic. So if you, for instance, say that you want to make 6 figures, and the most that you've ever made is maybe $65,000, well, that might not be realistic. Why are you saying now you want to make 6 figures and nothing has really changed from your current job to the job you're seeking? So I think it's really important to be realistic, but be true to yourself. What do you think, Yolanda?
I tend to agree, because oftentimes people will undersell themselves, thinking that once I get inside, I'll get the compensation that I need. And we all understand how compensation works inside companies. It's usually on a system or a cycle. Also, you know, if you're looking at a career, you should know about what that career position should be offering you. If you're looking for a job, then that's when you typically have those dilemmas, you know. So there's a difference between career management, looking for things that are going to grow and progress you, versus looking for a job and hoping this is the next thing. So if it's all about the money, you're probably not going to be successful long-term in that particular role. And to Pam's point, you need to be true to yourself and make sure that you're not underselling yourself.
So let me ask you this. Is there a particular website that maybe that person should go to find out where their worth is? Or, you know, a lot of times people like to go to salary.com. A lot of times people might want to go to Glassdoor. So exactly what should that particular prospect, what should he or she do?
Well, I'm going to answer that. So one of the things that we often experience is people will come external, interview and say, oh, I should get X amount of dollars. I'm like, where did you get that? And they say, I got it from salary.com. Just be mindful, salary.com, dice.com, Glassdoor, those are good websites that give you a general guidance, but they don't take in all the factors that you're getting compensated for in regards to that position. So again, kind of going back to the career management, you kind of get a sense of what each of these roles are paying. You can research, and there are a lot of people that are posting salary information out, but it's not validated. So just be careful not to over expect based on what you're finding. Free data usually is not valid data. Companies pay lots of money to build, good compensation structures and build salary structures that support the external market while, rewarding their internal employees. So it's a good place to go and see, but I wouldn't use it as this is how much you should be paying me.
When you say maybe a good way to research is talk to in the organization to get a feel for what the organization's compensation philosophy is.
Okay, so I know you probably hear this question a lot. I've been at my company for 3 years. I have gotten good reviews. However, I haven't received the promotions or the salary increases I expected when I took the job. What should I do?
I'll go first on that one. So 3 years, been getting pretty good reviews and haven't been getting the promotions or the salary increases you expected. Well, my first suggestion would be to talk to your supervisor regarding what it is that you do expect. And look around and see, well, what is the tenor of the company? Is your company downsizing? Is it going through a period where it's not giving any increases maybe? Or is it the type of company where longevity is maybe highly rewarded and you have to stay in the role maybe 5 years before getting promoted? Maybe it's not a very progressive company. And those are the types of things to look at before you even take the job. But I would talk to the supervisor and say, hey, you know, I'm noticing that if you notice people around you are getting promoted and you're not, ask the question. You know, say, hey, I'm getting good reviews. We've not talked about any gaps in my performance. Help me understand, you know, what I'm doing or what I could be doing to get compensated better.
And I'm going to just tag on to what Pam was just saying. You know, really ask the questions and hear what they're saying to you. So oftentimes we hear what we want to hear versus what the employer is saying to us. And if you start getting some patterns of feedback, there might be an opportunity for us to kind of turn the mirror and say, okay, where is the gap? But regarding promotions, oftentimes we think longevity and tenure in position increases our opportunity for promotion. A lot of companies and employers look for increase in job scope to equal the promotion. That's really what the promotion is. So just don't confuse the fact that merit-based pay with, yeah, I did my job, so your merit increase should be higher than the average if you're really doing a really good job. Your bonuses should be a little bit more than the average if you're doing a really good job. Your promotion should come when you can identify that there is a really different increased scope of job, not just enrichment of the job, but an increased scope. You know, not that I do like 3 more groups, but I actually have more responsibility, that you're building new skills and new abilities, you know, using new skills and building, you know, different capabilities in order to progress the company forward. So I think that's really important because it's really, you know, and then on the real side, you know, sometimes it's just timing. She was saying the tenure of the company, the sponsorship that you have when your manager is not in the room. A lot of the decisions can be made at a higher level, so just building that network of support where others are able to acknowledge what you do. Your peers speaking highly of you is a huge indicator of when you're going to move forward from a progression perspective.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good. You know, because I'm thinking, you know, you're with the company for 3 years or so, and sometimes because of, like you said, because of the economy, you know, there's no room for growth. But I'm thinking, you know, should that prospect, I mean, maybe that person feels like, you know, because we outsource or we went in a different direction, should that person come back and say, you know, I've been here for 3-5 years, and my percentage has only been 1%. I feel like I should be at this rate because this is where salary.com or other, you know, websites of potential people that's doing my position, they might feel like, well, I should be at this salary, which is probably $10,000 more than what I'm making. How should that potential candidate for a position, but how should he or she should react to that?
So I'm going to say, if they're getting like less than what the merit budget is, they're not performing.
Okay.
And typically, that's what happens. I mean, inside as an HR partner, watching and listening to conversations, I mean, if your salary increase is not on average, there's probably a performance issue. And so, probably not the time to go ask for a pay raise. Maybe it's the time to say, can you tell me what is the difference to where I can get the full merit? I mean, so there's, there are a lot of different factors. And most of it we don't, as the individual person managing our career, making sure that people are telling the right stories, have the right branding for us. But it's probably, in that case, nice. Because the manager's probably not going to be very empathetic.
True. True. Yeah.
Right.
And it's really good to be aware of, in your particular industry, what is the average salary increase. I know for many years running, for good performance, the average salary increase was 3%, and that was for good performance. And when you hear people expecting maybe 10%, that's really not what the market is doing at that time. So it's really good to be aware of the industry and what average salary increases are.
Okay. Thank you. So here's another very popular question. I've heard my company use the term high potential. For people that are usually fast track, I think I'm as capable and as good and get as good results as some of those high potentials. But I've not been in the know about promotional and developmental opportunities. How can I change the situation for the better?
Yeah, that high potential, high performance thing, that's a tricky one. And again, it depends on the company. So being very aware of your organizational culture when it comes to that type of thing. Keith was mentioning in his presentation how some people are promoted based on potential, and while others are promoted based on performance that they have proven that they're worthy of that promotion. And getting a good sense of where you fall in that range takes a lot of self-awareness. And I think we really have to listen to some of the things that have been said all morning long about those relationships and those mentorships, sponsorships, all of that comes into play. And so many companies look at high potential. They look at, is this person the kind of person that maybe I can see at maybe 3 levels beyond where they are right now. And when they say that, they're looking at, yes, some performance, but they're also looking at perhaps leadership presence. They might be looking at how has that person taken on new responsibilities or projects, what is that person's organizational reputation. A lot of things come into play with that high potential. So knowing where you fall, it takes a lot of savvy. And so you have to ask some hard questions, and you have to take a really good look at how you're doing in the organization. Yolanda, how has it been in your organization? What did you say about
So
that?
I've worked in some interesting places. I've worked at Applied Materials. I've worked at a software company here in Austin, Pervasive, and I worked at Dell, and I'm now at Pearson. And I will tell you that every company has a discussion around potential, and it's really around succession. And it's in you and how you manage those relationships is super critical. And I'm not saying that you have to be best buds, but people need to see your value. To our point, outside of your current scope, but how do you expand what more can you offer the organization? One of the main topics I like to talk about is, or we talk about a lot, is emotional intelligence. Just how you respond to things. And that is a really big indicator of your ability to go for it. And I know that's a big part of assessments today. They'll say, well, he has low EQ. I'm like, yeah, every time you give him some feedback, he does not take it or he's defensive. So, yes, you ask for the feedback. The better you are at receiving the feedback, the more willing people are going to be willing to give you the feedback. So open yourself up to understand what that gap is, and then recognize that if there's not a path, recognize there's not a path, and you have to make the move accordingly.
you know, another thing that goes into that high potential piece is mobility. You know, if you are open to taking some of those positions that, you know, if the company is looking at getting to a whole different market or a different product, are you the kind of person that's really open to that kind of change and would willingly take on something brand new and deal with that ambiguity well?
And just to add one more thing, I think when you think about your career, realize on the other side, there is some science to it, but there is more of an art. You know, even in how the decisions are made, you know, they're mixing a little science, our philosophies, the guidelines, and then there's the art of how do we orchestrate and create the best picture or the best piece of art that's going to help the company be successful. So think of your situation and your engagement as, you know what, you're managing a little bit of science and probably a whole bunch more art, and just being able to massage and make all those things work together.
Let's see.
He's got a hard question.
Well, how long should you be on a job before you ask for a raise or a promotion?
Oh, goodness.
Is it ever too soon?
Yes, sometimes it's too soon. And remember, we're employees too, so we want the money too, so I want to put that out there.
Yeah.
But if you haven't learned the job and you just got there, you know, when I say just got there, 3 to 6 months, probably a little bit too soon. Unless the job that was sold to you is very different than the job you were doing. And at that time, I think you can go back and say, let's evaluate this situation, and here's what it feels like. So I think that's really important.
That is, and you know, I just want to kind of add to this question, because a lot of times you're right. That person may start doing 2 to 3 different jobs within a job, and you might feel like he or she work is more valuable. So during this time, you know, after even 6 months, if that's not what the original job required, but I'm doing more because of the recession, you know, because of the economy, then should that person renegotiate during that time?
Certainly they should mention in their evaluations, and I know a lot of companies have employees do self-evaluations, and then the manager will do their comments, and then they'll do a mid-year review or end-of-cycle review or what have you. And so certainly you should be documenting those results that you're getting in those extra projects or assignments that you are performing well on, and make mention of those, and then be very candid about, you know, my understanding of this job, and you can even bring out whatever documentation you have about what the job was sold to you as, and just say, you know, my understanding of this job was that my duties would include blah, blah, blah. I feel like because of these results over here that I've gotten on these additional responsibilities, that I've added a lot of value. Remember, Rachel mentioned adding value to the organization. Keith mentioned adding value to the organization. So you want to use that wording. I feel like I've really added value to the organization, maybe even more so than you expected. And so, you know, I feel like my rewards should be higher than expected. I think I exceeded expectations here. So you can have that candid conversation. I think it's very appropriate.
And then there's that little famous last line on the job description, other duties as
Other
assigned.
duties as assigned. Yeah. Yeah, be prepared for that when you brought it up.
But we know the difference between other duties and a third job. So you should be
Definitely document what you're doing.
You know, another time I would say that would be good to not ask for, but highlight why you should get consideration is if there are going to be a lot of hiring into the organization. I'll tell a true story. When I was at Dell, I came in, you know, Dell was notorious for, kind of underhiring a little bit, you know. That's okay, it works out. That's the perception people have sometimes. And so I took a job, and as we were going through, so they started hiring, we had some openings, and they started hiring all these people. And I'm like, wait a minute, you know what the roles are, you know what the levels are, and then they say, well, you're going to train them. Okay, so I actually took that as an opportunity to have a discussion with my manager. I'm like, okay, what needs to happen in order for this to change for me? I didn't want them to not get theirs, because the more they got, the more I could go leverage, you know? That was my thought process. And so throughout that discussion and that understanding how to, you know, build a relationship, more so with my compensation team, you know, to go and work my manager on the back door because she was so stuck on her budget. That was the thing that helped me kind of get level so that I would have helped train my colleagues, but I would do it with a much bigger smile. And then, you know, so when you start seeing a lot of hiring activity, there is going to be natural compression that's going to happen. So it might be a good opportunity to say, you know, align with the value that you're bringing. Hey, can we take a look at this if you feel like there's a gap?
So, everybody's always talking about networking. This is what we're doing right now. We're networking all the time. And how important is it to the career advancement? Is it really, or is it just networking, just another popular buzzword?
Oh, it's so important. So important. If you don't have a network, you don't have a career. Right. I mean, you can expand every job I've had, I've gotten a contact for that opportunity through a network contact. Absolutely. Meaning like sending my resume through, you know, the applicant tracking system that, you know, shows up with every 50,000 other candidates and applicants. No, it was a network. Job at Pearson, the story they told me, I went and confirmed it. Oh, we saw lots of candidates. I'm like, really? Well, I had a network connection in through a network from Dell. And I went, so once I could access, there were like 234 candidates, applicants for that one job. And you know how long it takes a recruiter to go through all that? You are much better leveraging your network. You know, you're still gonna have to do the applicant tracking thing, but that network is critical to your success in your career.
Absolutely. I have to say that's been my experience as well. You know, I'm thinking about when I heard Carla Harris speak, and she's the managing director, Morgan Stanley, yeah. And she was talking about, rising in the organization, and she said that networking is the most critical piece of building your brand. And she talked about mentors and advisors and sponsors and how important that was. And it's not just, you know, networking and saying hi just because. I mean, it's strategic networking, and it is being consistent with following up with people in those networks. And it is making sure that somebody can speak for you when you're not there to speak for yourself.
And I just want to add to LinkedIn. If you don't have a LinkedIn account, you need to get a LinkedIn account. Now, I don't accept everyone into my network because I accept it's serious to me. I need to know something about you. I need to be able to have a conversation and say, oh yeah, that way I can talk about you should someone reach out and ask, and vice versa. You know, I don't ask everyone I see, and all 50,000 former colleagues at Dell can be in my network. That just doesn't do me any good. But you know, maybe the 30 critical few that I know that are really connected, I've tapped into. So if you don't have LinkedIn to build your, that is just a gift that's waiting, and it costs you no money and just a little bit of time. Absolutely. And I think it's critical.
So, let me ask you, I guess, from your experience, what approaches did you take when you thought about negotiating?
So we I'm going to speak from a woman, we are not very comfortable asking for things. You know, studies show women are not comfortable asking, and therefore men are better negotiators. And then as an African American community, we kind of have been taught to, you know, go present your credentials and get the job, and you're going to get paid fair, and everything should be good. Right? So that's kind of the place we start from. Well, we have to ask. You know, I always say, go in your mind knowing what your low number is. Don't make it a garage sale where you feel like you're haggling over little things that don't matter. But make sure that you feel confident that you have all your questions out on the table before. But don't lose sight of what you're trying to do. You're trying to land a job. You don't want to seem like a difficult employee. So it's a really balance. It's a balancing act, I think, that you have to, but I think you should always ask. I mean, I took this new job at Pearson, and I knew what the salary range was, and I'm internal, so I knew what the market reference point was, and I just had to ask. You know, I didn't need any more money, but the way I presented it was, I'm just going to ask because I feel like I should. I mean, granted, I need more money, don't get me wrong. But you know what I mean? I felt like the compensation was fair for what the job was and what I was going to be doing. I think you should always know what your number is, know what your minimum is, a realistic minimum, and I think you should ask. So if they take your first offer, if you take the first offer, there's probably a little bit more in there. So I always say, is that your best offer? That's the question I go back, is that your best offer? And they're either going to say yes or no. And if they say yes, then you can decide, well, put your next number on the table if you like, or you can say, okay, I'm comfortable with that best offer. So it's a balance.
And definitely the total rewards package.
Oh, absolutely.
Is really important. So you want to look at the benefits, especially these days when so many organizations are cutting benefits or not giving as good benefits. So you want to look at your medical benefits, you want to look at stock options, 401k options, tuition aid, any kind of developmental opportunities, all of that together you want to take into consideration. Because oftentimes the benefits can equal maybe even 30% of the salary. And so when you take the base salary they're offering plus 30%, how does that big picture look to you? Yeah. Good point.
So when you're negotiating, did you also say, maybe in your former job, that the total package was really good? Let's say it was, let's say 30% more. So when you're negotiating, did you also bring up the total package? Well, from my former job, our medical benefits was great, and I only paid, maybe, I'm exaggerating, but maybe $50 a week. Compared to with this company, I'm paying probably about almost $700 a month. So now I'm negotiating. How would I go about this practice if, to make, just to make up, because it's the total package. A lot of times the total package could be 100K, 200K, you look at it all, So how would you go about that?
Well, I think the way you do that is you have to have a pro and con sheet. So when you interview, when they're deciding if they like you, you should be deciding if you like their offer. So pros and cons, comparing all the like benefits. And then there's some benefits that you know that you can't compete with. If one company offers a pension and the other company doesn't offer a pension, probably not a good negotiating point. It's just a choice you're going to make to say, I'm going to take the company with no pension. That's a career move you're making. This opportunity gives me more. Benefits, like healthcare, some of the fixed benefits, I think, I call them, where you can't negotiate that per your individual situation. But if you have high medical needs, then that's going to be the driver for you, right? Vacation time, sometimes people's like, well, I've been here for 18 years and I want, my 1 month vacation. Well, are they going to change the policy for you? Probably not, but sometimes they can work a side deal where it's like, okay, I'm going to let you have the time off, but it's not recorded. But one of the things I always say to people, though, if it's not written down, it's not forever. So, just know that it could go away should that happen. So I think you just really need to do a pro and con and say, this is what is on the table. I actually have a situation right now in real life that's happening. We want to hire a guy, and this guy has 7% match, up to 7% match on his 401k. He has a pension, and he has, 20% higher salary. I'm like, why does he want to come to us? But really, for him, it's gonna have to be about the job, because we can't negotiate and meet him where he is, but we're still gonna offer him the opportunity. So it's really becomes a personal decision, like what works for you and your family, where it takes you on your career path.
Yeah, absolutely. And wouldn't you say that the job fit really is huge, plays a big, big part, you know? Is this something that's gonna make you happy, not just on a monetary level, but is it a good fit for you? Something that really speaks to your passion?
As we all know, money is a short-term motivator, right? I mean, most of us probably don't even know when the check comes anymore, because it's like already spent. So there's got to be more value than you know, your value is greater than the paycheck.
Absolutely.
And that's something that we have to often remind ourselves of.
Okay, and for an executive position, are those positions hidden? Meaning like maybe it's just for internally, you know, they might hire internal, or actually there's a specialized recruiter to go find a position, or how would you speak upon that?
It depends on the company. I mean, I've worked in both scenarios. My previous employer was totally internal. We did not hire external people into management. Or when I say did not, very seldom did we. But with my current job, we very much do hire external, and we have a recruiter that specifically manages those executive level positions.
And I think this is where your network really matters. You know, opportunities often are, they're not hidden, but they're sponsored. You know, if someone's thinking about you for a job, they kind of have it on your mind. So if you're not that person, you want to get in front of that person who might be out there sponsoring the other person. So that's your networking, your relationship, that value that you bring to the organization. Executive recruiters, they're real. Don't ever pay a recruiter. I always say you shouldn't have to pay for it to get a job. The job is supposed to pay you. So there are recruiters out there that would like charge you to sign up with them. Like, we'll help you for free. I mean, I don't know if anyone's ever experienced that, but there are executive recruiters out there that focus on certain roles and opportunities. But to the most part, I think a lot of it is internal. But then when there are new skill sets, they have to go to the open market. And it's often built on someone networks. If you go and do the 6 degrees of separation, the people in your executive team, like see how they're connected, there's probably probably looks like a spider web, tangled. Because there's probably some connection outside of work.
Okay, so for its value with education, you know, a lot of times you have Ivy League schools, then you have University of Texas, you have online degrees. So at this point, if you're to weigh it, when you're negotiating the salary, does that mean anything, or to go more about experience, or which is more valuable, the experience or the education?
The education gets your foot in the door. Maybe gets you a seat at the interview table, but it's not the end all be all. You know, unless it's a highly specialized, you know, job, like in the medical field. I mean, you have to be a doctor. You have to have gone to medical school,
right,
you know, for some positions. But in the vast majority of positions, yeah, the education helps, gets you looked at, but it's not the end all be all.
And you asked about Ivy League schools versus state schools versus online schools. Companies have a measure of value on those different types of institutions in their compensation structure. So be mindful of that when you're making your choice to go back to grad school. Talk to that career placement office to see the average salary that they get folks placed at. And oftentimes, if you go back and get, you know, after you've gone to work for a few years, and you're going to go back and get a graduate degree, then how do you plan on using that? Is it about your personal enhancement, or are you about making a career move? If you're about making a career move, it's probably going to happen outside of your existing company, where you're going to have to go and land a job with a company that's looking for recent MBA graduates. So there are some career decisions that you have to think through when you're doing that investment.
So, let's say that you are making a new career move, and let's say for 15 years you were a marketing director, but at this time now you want to go into human resources. But if you look at LinkedIn, everybody pretty much said how great of a worker you were at this company. You received a lot of accolades. So when you go to the negotiating table for right now, I would imagine that they look at you and say, well, you have no experience in human resources, but I see you were a director in marketing. So how should someone negotiate their salary?
Can I take that one? Please.
I really think that's about understanding your competencies. What are the comparable skill sets that you can take from a marketing role and put into your HR role? I mean, there are a lot of common skill sets, and so that's what you as an individual looking to change careers need to be able to go and articulate. If you're good in customer service, well, there's a huge customer service component in a human resources organization. If you're a marketing person and want to go be finance, you got to know how to do a spreadsheet. Now, if you can't articulate that, it's probably not going to happen. But the competencies and understanding the skills that are transferable, I think, is how you get in. You might not get the same level. And guys, title is important sometimes, but you don't want that to be the enabler of your career, just a title. Make sure the job is valued. And if there's something you really want to do, and it may be a step back in order to get in there to do that, get the experience, I say you should consider doing it.
So when you're looking at your salary, because you're not looking at salary.com, as you mentioned, so if you are, how would that person go about finding out exactly what level they feel like they're worth to that company? Because when you, as you mentioned earlier, you said you already knew the range for that salary. So how would somebody average, like me, someone in the audience, how would they go about doing that?
I'd say have a friend in human resources.
Yeah.
No, we don't tell all the secrets. I hope my boss is not in this room. It's being recorded. But just have people in your network you can go and tap into. People will tell you generally what is the range and what you can expect. And when you're interviewing for a job, ask them what is the grade level in the job. And then, so how does that compare to your overall compensation structure? So if they say, oh, it's a grade A, and then it goes up to F, we know that's low. So, you just have to figure out where you fit in the hierarchy of things. But, network, ask people. People will tell you things if you ask them. They will guide you. They won't give you the answer what you should do, but here's some things to think about.
I think we have some questions from the audience here.
I do have a question. It kind of plays into what y'all were discussing, and it was kind of in mind when we came up with this topic for discussion. I want to pose a scenario and tell me how someone would navigate it. So say they've been at a company for 10 years, and when they came to the company, they had a certain skill set. They didn't have the education that they currently have. Say they had a high school diploma, and they had experience that got them to a certain level. And you fast forward to the present, they've gotten their bachelor's, they've gotten their master's, they're working on their PhD, and they want to reintroduce themselves to the company because they don't feel that they're in a position that necessarily speaks to their strong suit. How would an employee go about doing such?
So are they in the same role?
Yes, they're in the same role that they entered the company, or a similar role.
And they're interested in new roles that would better leverage their new skills and experiences.
Yes.
Most companies have an internal posting process, and so definitely I would take a look at what is available in the organization and really look at the skills and experiences being sought for those positions that interest me, and then talk to people that are currently in those roles, if they're not brand new roles, to see, just to get a realistic job preview to see if it really is something that matches your interest and that's going to leverage your skills and experiences. And then if you think, yeah, that's something I'd really like to do, then it's time to start talking to your mentor or talking to your supervisor to say, hey, you know, I really am interested in X position because it looks like it would really leverage, you know, my new skills of blah, 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 blah. In my MBA program, I really was passionate about the finance component, and it looks like this position is going to leverage that. And, you know, what would you recommend I do to be considered or to be competitive for that role? Because since you've been there so long, it would be really good to know how are you seen in the organization. Do they just see you in the role you're in, or are they appreciating all the additional things that you can bring to the table? So you want to get a good feel for that.
And I just will add that I think networking internally for some of the experiences that you need in order to build that skill set to utilize your degrees is important. So even taking a volunteer job project, you know, maybe a little small project. And if you want to get that skill, sometimes you say, hey, can I work on this with you? And you may be a little bit stressed on your time, but it's going to give you the resources that you need in order to help you move forward. And then I was also making a note here, just because you get an advanced degree doesn't mean the job requires an advanced degree. So think about that. They probably aren't going to just pay you because you got it. It's nice that you have it. You know, companies always want you to grow and continue to develop, you know, yourself. And that's the perk of the tuition reimbursement programs. But there might not be any real reason to have an advanced degree for that particular role. So really be able to balance that. And it helps you balance your expectations. Okay?
Thank you, that's a great question. So right now, I'm gonna go ahead and open up the mic. If anyone has any questions they want to ask the panel at this moment.
When you stay with a company for a long time, and as we talked about earlier, as you referred to, salaries have flattened out in the last few years. Do you advocate people moving around between companies in order to increase their compensation over time? Or do you see that that is beneficial?
Well, I'll tell you, me, it's beneficial for me. You know, well, you know, the reality of it is, internally, you're going to get 2 to 3% increases a year.
Right.
You change companies, you're going to get 10 to 15 to 20% increases every time you change companies.
Sure.
I would not encourage you to change companies just for the money. You know,
No.
but yes, you know, it's compression. It just happens. You know, what's they say, the time value of money. You keep adding a little bit on, and people are coming in. It just compresses the job market. So that's where I think, you know, as one of your discussion points with your manager is, how often do you review our overall compensation against the market? Sometimes managers don't think to do that. A good HR person can help that manager think to do that so that they have equity in the workplace. And that's just part of the overall management. But, yeah.
And a lot of organizations, especially your large organizations, do it as a normal course every year. They're compared to the market. It just depends. It depends on where you are in your career, too. And what you might be leaving on the table. You know, if you have a good pension plan and then you're going to another job that pays well but they don't have pension, so you might be missing out on something there. It just kind of depends on where you are in your career.
So I think full disclosure, I think I've had probably, in the last 20 years, I've probably had 5 companies,
Okay.
maybe 4. And I think you probably had 2.
Yeah.
So she's, you know, so it's just different environments and kind of what's happening. And every time I moved for a better opportunity. And I have great relationships in the places I've been.
Yeah.
So always keep that relationship solid and that meaning, because everyone is an enabler of your career.
Absolutely.
Okay. This gentleman right here
Yes.
has a question. Sir, can you step to the mic, please? Thank you.
Carlos Charles, nice to meet you guys. It's great listening to you. As a supervisor, is there any type of like a skill set or talent to help you advance faster that you might be looking through an employee, and if so, what is it?
To advance you to a manager or advance your employees?
Like say if you got an employee, you're a supervisor, and you're looking at them, is there any type of skill sets that you guys are looking for as a supervisor that might help them advance quicker or faster, anything like skill set, personality wise, and so what are they?
So,
No, that's okay. No. A couple of things come to mind, and because I'm trying to, I hate to stroke it with one brush, but a couple of things. Adaptability, because the market and jobs change so frequently, so I would be looking for someone who could be adaptable and really take on new challenges and deal with that ambiguity. Also, critical thinking, someone who can think through issues and be able to work autonomously, and not have to have someone tell them every step of the way what to do. The other thing would be learning agility. Someone who really loves to learn, seeks opportunities to learn, and is able to do that quickly.
and then I would just add, if you have a specific employee that you see the potential in, you have to understand where the gaps are. So really, some tools are like doing a 360 feedback assessment, so that, that employee can get, how people see him, and then you can kind of structure an individual development plan for it. And a lot of times employees want that, they want straight feedback so that they can grow and make more money. And oftentimes, it's just easier just to let them do the work. So if you see someone with potential, just make sure that there is a forum for them to receive the feedback and you understand what the gaps are to the success. So in your company, there are probably some leadership competencies that matter. Which ones is that person missing? And then align the development plan in order for him to close those gaps.
Are there any other questions?
We talked a lot about sponsorships and the importance of having a sponsor, but I was wondering if, assuming that you do have a sponsor, is it important to identify who that sponsor is, and if it is, then what's the best way to do that?
And I've heard a couple of different things, because Keith was saying that you don't ask the sponsor, they ask you. But I've heard other people say, no, you very much should ask someone if they would be your sponsor. So the philosophy on that differs. And you should know who is speaking for you in those meetings when you're not present, so that you have a good idea of what that person thinks of you and what message they are saying about you. And you can always make sure that your brand is consistent, so they're saying what you want them to say about you. So I think absolutely you should know who your sponsor is. What do you think?
I think you should know, oftentimes the person that you think your sponsor, if they lose their power center, then their sponsor capability is kind of void.
Yeah.
So, it's important to know kind of like the organizational politics. Do I have a sponsor? I can't tell you today if I have a sponsor, but I think I have people that value my work. And so you're going to get, recognized, I think, when people see the value in your work. But I think to her point, I don't think you should go ask. Because you're saying go and tell my banner. I mean, people have to want to do that for you.
But I'm glad you mentioned what you said, Yolanda, because they have to have the juice, to speak for you. So if they lose the juice, then
Yeah.
it might
So
not
like
help as much.
when your sponsor gets fired and you're so aligned, it's just not that you're going to get fired, but you have to go and establish relationships, and people see you now in the eye of that person that was first, promoting you. well, you know, he said, and so you kind of lose a little value. So it's really important to keep a broad network of support, you know. Yeah.
Any other?
Good afternoon, my name is David Jones, and my question is, at working with temporary jobs, I have a roommate that has a temporary position, and they hired 6 people. They say out of those 6 people, they're going to hire 2 permanently. What would you recommend that they could do and to make themselves one of the permanent employees?
That's a very good question, especially since our practice is to do temp to hires, especially for our administrative associate positions. But that temp needs to get to know as many people as possible, and not just in the area in which they're working, but in other areas as well, because you never know which areas might be hiring. It might not just be that team or that department that they're currently working in. It might be other departments. So they need to really network and get a broad understanding of what's happening in the organization beyond just what they're doing in that role.
And work hard, be on
And
time.
work hard, be on time, right?
Volunteer.
So I do have a question also. So let's say right now, because of the economy, you know, a lot of times, there used to be a time that maybe you may have been away from the workforce, maybe a month or so, but now it's almost a year, 2 years, 3 years. So during that time, would you say that maybe that person held a position 3 years ago, is it depreciating them to a certain degree? So maybe when they come back, they try to, even try to negotiate, but they've been out of the workforce for 3 years. And a lot of times people say, well, I went to school during this time. So coming from an HR point of view, how do you value it?
So I don't think it should reduce your value to the organization, but I think you have to think about, if you were in a job for, you know, many years and then you were out of the market, something's changed probably in how you do your job. So you may have skills that are not as current. And so because those skills aren't current, you might have a lower value. What you don't have is as much negotiating power because you don't have a job that you're leaving. You know, so this is where I really encourage folks to know their low number. You know, I made a strategic decision when I left Dell, and I had planned it all the way out to what I was going to do when I got home in the first 6 months, the first 8 months, you know, and I was out for 2 years. I started looking for a job at probably about the 18-month year. Well, yeah, probably about a year and a half into it. But I knew what my low number was. And, you know, I was like, okay, I'm going to have to do this. So you have to, there's a humility piece to that too, where you have to know where does it really, when is $10,000 going to change your life? So that you can have a good logical approach to it. Well, I thought $10,000 is just taxes. So when I divide that by 52 weeks, it's like $28 extra a paycheck. Okay, it doesn't matter. So, you know, you have to really do the math. And then from that, you decide how you're going to negotiate. So it doesn't devalue you, but your skills are different. And they might not be as current. So you might not, you know, you're probably going to, you're not going to start at 15 years of experience, you're going to start at 13 years. When you were out the 2 years, you didn't do anything. You got to go from the 13.
And there are some ways to keep those skills sharp while you are out of work, whether it be some volunteer assignments. You know, you can volunteer with organizations and work on a project where you're leading the project team and you're maybe honing some skills during the time you're out of work. And so you're adding that to your resume so it doesn't just stop when you left your job or got laid off. You know, you continue to learn and continue to add to your skill set.
Any more questions?
Let me tell you a quick little story how important it is to know how to do math when you're talking about your negotiation. I can remember this, my very first job, I was 16 years old and I went to work at a time when minimum wage was $3.35. That's a long time ago. Some of you guys remember that. Yes. And so I got a job at McDonald's, and it was the best job I could have ever had. So if you have a kid that needs a job, they need to go get one at McDonald's. I'm trying to get my kids there. Because it really teaches you how to work, but it was hard work. So $3.35 an hour, and I worked so hard, and I learned how to mop the whole lobby. And it was reviewing, been there a year, and they were gonna give you a raise, and they gave me 5 cents. I was so insulted. I was like, oh my God, that was 5 cents. Well, that was like 10%. All I spent was 5 cents. So the number was so small, I quit. I was like, forget this. My mom was like, where'd you go? And I'm like, I'm gonna get a job at the library. And, but it was really, I look back and I laugh about that now. That was a pretty big percentage increase. It's all relative. But you know what I mean? So when you really start thinking about numbers and cents and negotiating, you know, do all the math. Whole numbers, percents, you know, there were lots of different ways. I was just taken aback. I just could not, and that was totally deflating to me. So when you're presenting what you're looking for, you know, sometimes companies respond better to, I'm looking for a percentage increase. And then sometimes they want a whole amount. Maybe $5,000 seems petty to them. It might be a life changer for you. So you just got to get a feel of what that's about. You know, so, but anyway, I want to share that. But real math is important. You said reading is fundamental, and calculating this too. So, it's like,
Well, if there's no more questions, I'd like to go ahead and conclude this session. And I also want to really thank Pamela, Sherman, and Yolanda, Owens. You guys did a terrific job. I learned a lot, and I really appreciate it. And I also want to make an announcement.
oh, can I make an announcement real quick? Okay, guys, so now we're about networking. At Pearson, we have some jobs. So I'll take, this is our public service announcement. So I'll take this opportunity. But if you have or know of any high school graduated seniors, but have less than 2 years of experience in college, we have some opportunities for them to work a short-term assignment, $12 an hour, taking the GED test. That's all you gotta do. So, I'm going to tell you my email address, and you email me, and I'm gonna email you the information if you're interested. So I've got my friend and like 19 of his little buddies. So everyone can make some money of the last few weeks because this is an opportunity and they still are looking for people to do this test. So it's yolanda.owens@pearson.com. So please share that information. Don't share my email, to share. Email me, I'll email you the document and then you can spread it around. And tell them where you heard from it. Tell them you heard it at the National Black MBA Conference. That we have opportunities. You know, 24 hours a week at $12 an hour. That's good math when you're just playing video games most of the day. And then secondly, we have, I take care of a group that's out on the East Coast, but we're looking for some technical software developers. So if you know anyone that has gaming or mobile software development experience, email me, like they're for real jobs. Okay, do we have any more Pearson PSAs that we need to do real quick? So I want to thank you.
Yeah, so I just want to say, save the date for our Leaders of Tomorrow on November 3rd from 7 o'clock p.m. to 11 p.m. at the Show Crossing Event Center. So that's where we're going to have a benefit, a casino benefit. So I just want to go ahead and make that announcement. Right now, there's a couple of cards that's being passed around. But I also want to say, man, I learned a lot. It was a great experience for me. I really appreciate being a part of this organization, and I really think this panel it was really good. So with that being said, I'm going to let Gregory come up here.
All right, well, I want to thank the panelists again for coming. I nagged them to come up on this panel. And all the questions are my own personal questions, so I can figure it out. No. I came up with them so I can figure my own career out. But I just want to thank them. And I was asked to make this announcement because the Career and Postgraduate Education Expo seems to be a little bit hidden, but we've got 18 exhibitors in conference room 301, and they're anxiously awaiting your visit. You know, they've got some things they want to speak to you about, Pearson in particular. I'm a little bit partial, so.
We have real jobs.
So since we do have a little bit of time, please go ahead and visit our exhibitors, and hopefully you find the right thing for you. Thank you.